You know, I think about us, the three of us, what we could be. I think about it all the time.
Please. It's terrible.
No, it's not. I know June. She's my friend. I care about her. How's your day going? You look pretty.
Thanks. I wore it just for you. Her father's a driver named Nick. He helped me to survive. Yes, you can, because I can't lose you.
I'm not gonna let anything happen to you.
What about you?
Your girlfriend is a badass.
Welcome to Above the Garage, a Nick and June, the Handmaid's Tale podcast. Hi, friends, and welcome to our rewatch, Season 1, Episode 5. Today, we're going to talk about the episode Faithful, and let's do our round of introductions and get started.
Hi, I'm Wanda.
Hi, I'm Marigold.
Hi, I'm Ginger.
I'm Scarlett.
And I'm Kate. So the episode opens with them playing apparently their 34th game of Scrabble, which is probably more than I have played in my lifetime, even though I like the game. But if I was in Gilead, I would love the game. So, but that I'd forgotten that they had played. It's been another month, basically, I guess.
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah. And she is doing a little voiceover, flirting with him, showing her leg, even says that she likes him letting her win. So that surprised me a little. I feel like it's a little like Stockholm syndrome-y, or like being a little flirtatious at this point. What did you guys think?
Yeah, I remember when I first watched this, I did feel like there was something that was going to be building between Fred and June during this scene, just their kind of flirty interaction.
Mm-hmm. And then he gives her the magazine, which
Yep.
very exciting to a woman in Gilead.
Yeah.
He tests her. I mean, I like that she was careful because he tells her, like, if you want to read it, and she says it's forbidden. So she's always very careful. And he's like, well, with me, you can.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. She says it is forbidden to both of them in this episode.
Yeah.
To both her and Serena. But yes, I also appreciate that. It seemed very evident that he was going to let it pass, but I think it's smart of her to reject it at first go.
I think she's manipulating him again, though. Like she likes to play along with him.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting when she talked about a poem that she had read that said, "You fit into me like a hook into an eye."
Yeah.
And then she says a fish hook and an open eye, which obviously then when I first saw it, I was kind of like, oh, okay, so she's not actually like falling for him.
No.
But on my rewatch, I thought it was interesting that she talks about an open eye, and we find out, or she finds out in this episode, that Nick is an eye.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I don't think it was coincidental.
Mm-mm.
When she says thank you, he says that look in your face is thank you enough. And it just gave me the vibe that he's also impressed by June for some reason. Like everybody's impressed by her. I mean, obviously she's a main character, but she has this fire to her. I guess that's why people are drawn to her.
But then she played it up more, and he still like loves it. So he's not as
because she sees that in him. Like
exactly.
She sees how much he eats that up when she flirts with him.
Yeah, she knows he's easily manipulated too. She had no problem learning how to manipulate him.
Yeah.
So I thought it was interesting then too how this goes right into the flashback where she meets Luke, and she mentions at the end of the flashback with Luke that he's married and he doesn't act married. And I think I think the reason why she thinks of this flashback is because Fred is married and is not acting married. Like
that's interesting. Yeah.
So I think that's why she thought of it at that moment, which I thought was very interesting.
I find it insane that Serena has not noticed them playing Scrabble every single night.
Yeah.
Maybe also she has and she can't do anything.
What caught my attention at the meeting was that it was Moira that initiated that whole contact between Luke and June.
Yeah.
And that when they're going by the pictures, when he picks one, he says to her, "You look invincible." And I think that has a lot to do with what happens towards the end of the episode.
Yeah, it does.
It's that invincibility. I mean, obviously we haven't gotten to that part yet, but there's certain things that happen and that we'll discuss that build her up to feel like that. And I think that's part of her character, that invincibility, because I don't think Gilead ever really broke her all the way.
Yeah, and she says this later also about Emily. She said she looked invincible, you know.
What I find interesting about that whole interaction between Maura and June is in the beginning, Maura is ragging on June about the guys that she's attracting to her Tinder profile. And what's interesting to me is what June says. And June says to Maura, "You're too picky." And Maura continues to go through her profile. And June says, "Beggars choosers." Now, I don't know if this is American saying, but as Americans, we know what that means. But I looked a little deeper to see what Webster had to say about that. And the whole wording of that saying is beggars can't be choosers. And what Webster says about that is beggars can't be choosers is used to say that people who need something should be satisfied with what they get, even if it's not actually what they want.
That is so interesting, Wanda.
That is profound.
Yeah, that indicates that she's willing to settle for whatever attention she gets from a man. So that opens her up to Luke, getting involved with Luke.
Yeah, I thought about this too. Like, I thought that maybe June was in this part of her life where she just was kind of fed up with men, and she's just open to whatever man is out there, and Luke was there.
Yeah, I mean, when you get involved with a married man anyway, you're willing to settle, to be second.
Definitely.
Right.
That's
right. So I just find it interesting that she's willing to settle. I mean, I'm not judging her. I mean, she had to be young. By my estimation, she had to be in her early 20s. Because when she was captured, she was 28.
And Hannah was 5,
which means she
had her at 23. So you're right.
Yeah,
that's young. Yeah.
So
my age when I had my daughter, pretty much. If I think about it, I had my daughter when I was 24. So I mean, the difference in age and the way that you think is I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, at 20 something, you think you know it all anyway.
I was gonna say any of us. I mean, most of us probably thinking about settling with whomever we were with at our
But Wanda, I think
first. Go ahead.
Wanda, I think that's a really good. It's really interesting that you picked up on that, because I thought there was a lot of little things in her interactions with Luke in this episode that made me think, like, she played it off. Like, he would say things, which I can get into examples, but he would say things and she would laugh it off, but you can tell like it kind of annoyed her, but they're still in that flirtatious phase where, like, I don't think she was thinking too deep into like what this means for who he really is, you know?
Yeah. You mean that cringy coffee shop date? Whatever that was. Yeah.
Like the guy asking you if you had sex with your lesbian friend, like it's as cringy as you can get, right?
Yeah.
But Jim batted it out, like, because he says, well, in my experience, and she's what experience? As a lesbian, as a college girl?
But like Ginger said, she did it while like giggling and giving him a pass, like
she
wasn't really calling him out.
Yeah, she was definitely annoyed, but she definitely laughed it off more than I would have. But again, I think that's her like being, I don't know. It's too early in the relationship, so you're still kind of like willing to not see the red flags.
Yeah. Exactly. And there were plenty of red flags with this guy, I think.
I think it's interesting that when I went back and I was like, how did Luke find her after they left?
I know, I thought that too.
And I was like,
did you figure it out?
Well, he must have gone on Tinder. Yeah. So like, it's very clear to me now that Luke had the intention to cheat from the very beginning. It wasn't like this relationship that like grew, but he made this intentional decision.
Right. And I've heard people say that he was separated first, but I do not believe that's true, because when they're at lunch, she's saying, I tell her where I have lunch. I tell Annie where I have lunch every day. You don't do that with someone you're separated from, Yeah.
I also think it's funny that June is surprised that he doesn't tell Annie. Like, what would he say to Annie? It's
a little naive. Yeah.
I met this girl on Tinder and I'm having these lunch dates with her in the middle of the workday. So,
but June didn't tell Maura because she knew Maura wouldn't approve of it.
Right. Yeah. They both know that it's shady.
Yeah. I have something to say about that later.
I just want to rewind to the food truck. I just want to give a shout out to Lucy and Ethel, who I believe are Lizzie's real life cats. Is that
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's all. I just love that she used her actual pet names in that because that's what I would do because I love my pets.
Oh,
That is all. My high value comment there. All right, so after they meet, we go
The cereal. The cereal
Yeah.
scene. And there's
Oh.
like when Fred gives her the magazine, she's reading like a little article that says 10 things how to know that a guy likes you. And then she's thinking about Fred because number one is he gives you little presents,
yeah.
meaning little gifts, meaning the magazine. And then when Nick walks in, she says 2. He keeps finding ways to run into you. And he
Which is
comes with a
adorable.
coffee.
Mhm.
Yeah, he
he
comes in
always
with a
does
coffee. But he's a little, I mean,
he's
I
flustered.
kind of
We don't know what's
he's
happening
flustered.
yet.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
but something is
flustered.
going on in his brain.
So after that, Serena comes in.
Right.
and
But I like
wants,
the way like
June.
he keeps making eye contact with her and she likes it because she doesn't know that he's actually stressed and probably wants to speak with her like
Yeah.
by herself. But she's just like, oh, he keeps looking at me like
He looks
want
like
to do.
so like disgusted in that scene to me. Like,
Yeah.
like he just knows that this is like going to be the last normal interaction that they'll ever have.
Yeah.
It's really
True.
sad.
But it's interesting when you rewatch that scene because, like, obviously when I first watched it, I didn't know what was going to happen. But like rewatching it now, it plays out totally different because now I know why Nick went in there, why he's like, because even Rita says, "Don't you have somewhere to be?" And he's like, "No," but you know, in his head, he's like, "I want to get her alone so I can talk to her," and you could feel his anxiety.
Yeah.
So I
it
think
is just like rolling off of him in waves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just funny how it translates totally different once you actually know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I do also want to point out that he also washed his own cup when he was done with it, which I thought was very polite. And
you have low standards, Marigold.
Well, but if you think about it, like a guardian probably doesn't need to like wash his own cup.
Marigold.
Well, they have Martha, so yeah.
No, I get it. I do get it.
Especially in Gilead.
In
That's
Gilead,
not,
that is an
that's
uncommon
not
act.
what men do. Again, Chris Nick is not misogynistic.
I was just saying, yeah, like it was just nice of him. Like he could have easily had Rita wash his cup, but he did it himself.
Yeah, no, that is a good observation. I just want to give you a hard time, but
Yeah,
yes,
I know.
that is so yeah. So Serena calls her out. I hate that she like pops her like dreaming bubble about how to know if a guy likes you by saying, you know, June, come with
Serena
me.
just manipulates her. She manipulates her because she just tells her like your time's running out. You don't want to be sent to the colonies. Like she's already like trying to get her to agree.
Yeah, that's a
trying
threat,
to be
though.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
That
threat.
is a threat.
Yeah.
And
It's literally a death threat.
I mean,
Yeah.
June was already scared. June thought it was about, she knew about Scrabble, she knew about the magazine, like she was thinking so many things, and then she's looking at the shears, thinking, you know, what she could do with the shears. And then, you know, she explodes the bubble, like you mentioned.
But I think it's interesting because Serena mentions to June about doctors impregnating handmaids, which in the last episode, June was propositioned by the doctor.
Right.
So that's where she says she heard about it. But I also thought it was interesting because, you know, June was so shocked when she mentioned Nick and obviously upset because Nick was her thing, you know, like that was the one good thing she had in Gilead. And now Serena's trying to ruin that for her. But I did notice that she said his name very softly.
Yeah.
Which is like their thing, you know, like that's how she always is with Nick. So I thought that was really sweet.
But she did look sad though.
Yeah.
I think she was a little upset
Blindsided.
because Serena says he already agreed to it. And the way that I saw it, the first time I saw it was like, even though she's not, I mean, she's upset, she's shocked, but she was just like he agreed, like he's my friend. He agreed to do this to me. I think that was her first impression because she looks upset over it. Like I couldn't really pinpoint that scene very well, but that's what I took the first time I saw it.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I think she would have preferred he say, well, let me ask June first. I mean, offer.
But I think he wanted to do that. He wanted to talk to her. That's why he went in the kitchen.
I agree.
But he didn't get a chance to. So because he probably didn't want June to feel like he had agreed and was willing to do this.
Right.
Yeah.
But she made it happen so quickly that he had no chance.
Yeah.
You know what else I noticed too? Like when Serena took June outside, June's first thought was she knows about me and Fred. And I thought it was very interesting in this episode. There was like a parallel between Luke. So June is the other woman with Luke, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
now she's the other woman again with
Yep.
Fred,
Mhm.
right? And then it kind of is like another parallel where she ends up being, well, like Nick and her are like cheating again. You know what I mean? So she's in three different.
They're breaking rules.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting, but I thought it was worth noting that like her first thought was Serena found out, and again, like I think why she's flashing back about Luke is because she's thinking about, here I am again as the other woman, you know.
Yeah, and I also think if we're gonna jump to that sex scene, I also think that they were like not equally awkward, but both very awkward. Like I even think that the scene with Luke in the hotel room is, she sighs when she gets in. It's just weird. It's not organically like passionate. I'm not saying they
No.
don't. I'm not saying they don't really like each other and want to have sex, but it's not the kind of like overtaking passion that you imagine affairs to be. And so she's thinking about it while she's having this awkward sex scene with Nick.
But yeah, that was strange to me that they contrast those two.
Mhm.
I just think, like, at least for me, when she's going up the stairs and she says, "Why does this time it feels like I'm cheating on Luke?" It's because she wanted it.
Yeah.
She wanted to be with Nick. If they're making you do that, you're not going to feel like you're cheating on Luke. It's because you want to do it.
Yeah.
That's usually how it is. And then it contrasts to when they go to the hotel room, and it's, I mean, the way that I see their relationship is just cute. And that scene was not awkward. It's because they both knew they were doing something wrong, even when they're talking and during their lunch. So where would we go? What would we do? And Luke's looking at her like a snack. And she's kind of building it like, well, I need some time, grooming, shoes, lingerie. Like she's throwing it out there and he's vibing. And then when they get to the hotel, it's just weird. Like I would expect for them to jump their bones. Like you have all this tension, but there was no tension. It was just because they both knew that it was wrong. That's the way that I read it.
Which I think though is the parallel to the very last scene where she goes to Nick.
Yeah.
Because there was no talking. There was jumping the bones once
there was no awkwardness.
Yeah. There was no awkwardness. Like it was very smooth and they didn't say a single word. So I think that's another reason why these scenes kind of play off each other in this episode.
Yeah, it's interesting they're all overlaid, sort of.
I think what's something else that is contrasting with Luke and June in the sex scene. June stops him and says, just because we're probably going to be doing this just once, I'd like to be on top. And of course, Luke, who's always thinking about himself, says, that's not a good for me. He's first thinking about himself. And that's, for me, that's always been what I've seen in Luke.
Yeah. So that actual line has been a point of great contention in my mind. I can't tell if he's joking or not.
I think he's like half joking, but also kind of serious,
Yeah.
That's how I took it.
I think the only reason he changed his mind was because June was like, that's a bummer. And she could stop it any minute. And he wanted to go through with the act. That's just I think that.
I was just confused by that because I'm like, why would a guy say no to a woman wanting to be on top? Like, what is so?
Because men that don't like that is because they feel emasculated because you have the control.
Yeah.
And men that don't like women to be on top is because they feel, that's the word, emasculated. Like I've heard that before many times.
So if you think about even like the sex position in Gilead during the ceremony, the man is on top. So like it's just kind of like a power,
That's kind of the answer.
It's a power thing.
Yeah, exactly.
June likes to have control. And in that first sex scene with Luke, you see that she pins his hands back.
Yeah.
And then when we go to the sex scene with Nick, he's the one that pins her hands down because he's on top before.
Yeah.
And I know I've talked about this with you guys like 1,000 times before, but I think that they had enough power in the situation to make Serena leave the room. But I get that it's a TV show, and the contrast between this and the final scene is beautiful, so I can deal with that. But I found it interesting this time around that I noticed when June is looking around the room when it's happening, that her attention lands on the gun.
I was debating that with Melissa today about that precise moment, because there's the gun and his picture with his brother, which we assume that's what it is. The picture's behind the gun, so we really don't know what she's looking at.
Yeah.
Is she looking
How
at
did
the
I not notice the picture in that scene?
Yeah,
I
the
was just
picture was
looking at
there,
the
like,
gun.
Yeah.
is she looking at the gun like, am I gonna kill Serena like with the shears? Because
Uh-huh.
any viewer could be like, well, she's looking at the gun because she wants to kill Nick, because Nick's,
No,
but
no,
that's
I
not
don't think
what it
that at
was.
all. I think it was a metaphor for they're going to be killed if they don't do this.
I also thought she was looking at, like, 'cause she looks at his record player, which isn't that forbidden?
Mhm.
And then he's got the picture of his brother from his former life. So I was thinking like two things, like she's looking at the forbidden things, right? Because this is forbidden what they're doing,
Mhm.
what Serena's making them do. But then also this is like a ceremony, right? That
Yeah.
Serena's making them do. So normally during the ceremony, she's checking out and trying to
Right,
distance herself.
dissociating. Yeah.
But then she doesn't want to dissociate with this because she does keep looking at Nick, and she does get into it, But I thought that maybe that's why she was kind of looking around, because she's trying to disassociate.
I didn't
don't know.
interpret it as that. I interpreted she was looking at Nick, and then Nick sees her looking. And obviously, like, that's taboo in Gilead for the handmaid to look at, a man, especially during sex. So then I felt like she like tried to like not focus on him. And I thought more so that the objects were like, we get like a tiny glimpse into who Nick is, like the record player, the picture, the gun means that he's a guardian. So I interpreted it differently.
They're trying not to connect with each other because he keeps looking at her and she keeps looking at him.
Yeah.
And they look at each other and it's awkward because Serena is like a creeper, just standing there looking at something that she obviously hasn't had in a while. It's just weird. It's funny because I was talking about this morning, like the picture's right behind the gun. And I always wondered, like, what is she looking at? But it's also like, oh, well, he's also somebody. He was a somebody before all of this.
Yeah.
He had a family like me.
Yeah.
Like, so she could have been looking at that.
Can we just look at the power dynamics here with Serena?
That's very interesting. Yeah.
Serena is the head of her house. Well, she has control over the subordinates in her household, right? Which are Nick, Rita, and June. And she's the one with all the power here. What she's doing, this is a ceremony that's illegal. She's gone rogue, and she's organized this ritualized rape. Nick and June are the two victims. Serena is the power in that room. And I think that's why they left her in that room to watch, because she's a show of force, right? She's
I think
there
you're
to
right.
control the whole situation.
Yeah. And it's very clear when she's standing at the door,
Yeah. I mean, she's
Literally.
domineering. She's tall and she's just this domineering presence in the room.
Yeah.
And I think it is very important to point out that Nick had no choice here either. What is he
Right.
going to say? No. And she's going to be like, oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Like he is a victim here too, even though he's a man, he still had no say in this
It's
matter.
still rape for him too.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And he says that, later in the episode. I couldn't say no.
Mhm.
It feels terrible, and you can tell, and it's just awful all around.
I
but
wanted
you're
to
right.
read a tweet from Margaret Atwood that someone had tweeted out. My crazy English teacher is making us write an essay on The Handmaid's Tale, where we're supposed to answer why Margaret Atwood put the theme of power and control in the book. We do not have telepathy with Margaret Atwood, so I guess Twitter is a close second. And Margaret Atwood's answer was, because it's in the world. It's not just women who are controlled in the book. It's everyone except those at the top. Gilead is a theocratic totalitarianism, not simply a man have power, women do not whirl. Lower status men are told when and who to marry, as an example. So Nick had no power. He's a low status man. And the perpetrator in this instance was Serena Joy. I think that needs to be clear.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
That's great
Yeah.
that you brought that.
In these episodes, we've seen the doctor that, who's kind of, we talked about it in
So
episode 4. The doctor, we debated whether he was trying to help or he was just going to be creepy. But there's a lot of people there. And even in this episode, we see off Stephen with a wife. And the wife, they're playing with a dog. And the wife tells her, I don't feel good. Maybe we can skip the ceremony tonight. And of Stephen says, you can't be sick every month, because there's people that are stuck there that don't want to be there, and that includes the men. There's men that don't agree with it, but they have to do these things to survive. It makes you wonder if maybe Nick agreed to it because maybe Serena would have gotten somebody else to do it.
Mhm.
She would have gotten somebody else. So
She
maybe
would
he's
have.
like, well,
Yeah.
I just think
maybe it
Nick-
wouldn't have been that bad.
Well, she's desperate, so she would
Yeah.
have found somebody.
Yeah, she
Well,
wouldn't have given up there.
I think maybe Nick was threatened with maybe June going to the colonies or
Mhm.
something. He did something to save June from something. That's just my head canon.
Yeah.
But even if he wasn't threatened with that, I could still see him thinking about that, because he knows that you can't say no to stuff like this.
Yeah.
So he knows that if they don't do it, there's going to be consequences that could be deadly,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, yeah, if she doesn't get pregnant, then at the very least, she's going to get moved to a different household.
Right.
As
This
Serena
episode also-
threatens her with that.
This episode also told us again that, the commanders could be sterile, which is something that I don't think it gets discussed further, but it was a shock the first time that I saw it. Like, it's them, the ones that have the problem, the powerful men, not really the
Yeah.
women.
I have something that's kind of not off topic, but the scene after they go to the market with Aunt Glenn, I just thought it was really interesting that she was like talking about her life before Gilead and how, like, obviously she was a drug addict and like she finally has a place to sleep every night and people who are nice to her. And I was just like, it made me really sad for her, honestly. Like, if that was what your life was before Gilead, and Gilead is like this nice place for you, like,
Yeah.
it's really sad. So I just wanted to
I think it also kind of shows, though, how this is so different for everybody, because you have, she's off Glenn, right?
off Glenn,
Yeah.
She's
But yeah,
Glenn.
she's happy with this because this is better than her old life. But then you
Yeah.
have June, who had a pretty good life before, so this is hell for her. And then you have like the wife of Emily, who is kind to her. But then you have Serena, who's just a monster.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting how everybody has a different perspective on their position in Gilead.
Yeah. And it's interesting how, like, I'm sure Serena and June were probably in the same like socioeconomic class before Gilead, and now they're in vastly different positions.
Because I don't think Serena's that much older than June.
I don't think so either.
For some reason, I want to say it's only like 3 years or 5 years or something. Because I don't think she's 40. I think she's in her 30s.
Apparently in the book,
No.
she's much older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
she
For
is.
that,
Yes.
I think Bruce Miller said that he got a prettier Serena so that there was like an even playing field between June and Serena. I mean, she's no competition to the older one in the book.
I mean, it definitely would play out a lot different if Serena was like an old woman with a cane
Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
this
it'd be
younger
weird.
woman. All right, so I wanted to go back to the whole Nick and June, their first time together, that scene. I wanted to point something out. I think we've mentioned this before, but there's some members of the Osblane community who've gone to the library in Los Angeles to look at the scripts.
which is
Mhm.
awesome. Thank you.
And yes, that's amazing. But they did note that in the scripts, June is like very much so thirsting over Nick. And she, when he's in the kitchen drinking coffee, she's saying like she wishes she was his cup. And she's thinking about him kissing her. And I thought it was very, it's just kind of funny because they did mention, though, I thought it was very important to point out that it's mentioned in the scripts that she thought the whole like her and Nick having to get together by Serena was a business transaction, but they made it very clear that she was aroused. So she was a willing participant in this because she's really attracted to Nick, and she kept mentioning about how good he smelled and what his you know, looking at him. So I think, I don't know how clear that comes across in the scene, but I thought that was interesting to point out.
Did she say he smelled like cigarettes but sweet?
I think so.
I don't know if I
Smell of cigarettes and sweat, I think.
Yeah,
really.
I think
Just surprising because I feel like he looks like freshly showered in that.
Yeah, I think
scene,
there would be
though.
something nice mixed in, not just
Yeah.
cigarettes and sweat. You would definitely have showered before that.
I think we see it because she doesn't disassociate in the scene, and you know they're both breathing, you know, and he gets carried away, and I think that's like why she touches him. Like there's that connection when she grabs his arm. At first you see it, you're like, they're not supposed to do that, and that kind of goes forward to the other ceremony that we see further down.
The arm touch
No, go
also
ahead.
wasn't in the script. I just wanted to add that. So that was all Max and
Uh,
Oh.
Mhm.
That was
Well, that was a nice touch
moment.
because that's a connection. There's a connection there, whether it's because she knew he was getting carried away and he's not supposed to, or whether she wanted to ground him, or whether she just wanted to touch him. Just
But I think she does the arm touch too because she wants the connection with Nick, because she doesn't want this to feel like a ceremony. Whereas
what I
she
think.
she knows that Fred needs the connection. Like we talked about this in the last episode, that he wants the connection and he needs that. And obviously she's just not into Fred. But she knows she has to kind of give that to him, I guess. But
Yeah.
with Nick, I think she's seeking it out because she does want that connection with him.
if we fast forward to the others, because we get to see another ceremony with Fred, and you know he's trying to touch her and he touches her thigh, and
Yeah.
she's pissed off because he's like, what the fuck are you doing, Fred? Like, you're touching my thigh, you're looking at me, you're not supposed to be doing that. So it's kind of like a parallel to her touching
Yeah,
Nick because
definitely.
she wanted that connection, and then she being repulsed and afraid because Fred's being a sleazeball and like touching her thigh.
Which,
Yeah.
by the way,
Yeah.
that's how the doctor touched her thigh too. That's
Yeah.
another reason why I thought the doctor was creepy, because it's that like hand going up the thigh, which is definitely not, she didn't want it in either situation.
So speaking of the ceremony, I don't know if either of you guys caught it, but Serena and June shared this look between the two of them, kind of like they were like sharing a secret.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Oh, in the pre-ceremony, is that what you mean?
yeah, before that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Agreed.
And then also we get to see Nick's look for like a brief second
Pissed. He's
when
pissed.
Fred enters the room. Yeah, he's pissed. You can tell that he's like
sad, and I can't wait to
disgusted.
go back and look.
Yeah,
now.
definitely.
Yeah,
go
I didn't
watch
notice
it.
any of that.
Yeah.
Well, I
She's
noticed that she
annoyed.
looked towards Nick's direction because I think she was thinking about what they did earlier.
Yeah.
June kind of looked a little, I don't know, smug maybe. Like she
Mhm.
looked a little happier than she should for this
Yes.
ceremony.
Yeah,
I
I'd
think because she
agree.
knew.
Her and
Honestly,
Serena, they
first.
both looked smug. They were
That's true.
sharing a secret or something.
I was wondering
Right.
why June was smiling.
Well, Serena was smiling because she's, I don't know how to say this in English, but like in Spanish, it's cogió a Fred de pendejo. She played Fred, you
Yeah.
know, like
Mhm.
you're not gonna get her pregnant because you can't.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's like the vibe that I got. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably why June was smiling then, because I think especially women have no power in this world. So
Mhm.
they know they have the power in this situation.
Yeah. It's true.
That could be it. After that, June goes to Fred's office pissed off, like ballsy, right?
Right, which is
Yeah.
also ballsy
Yes.
of her.
And she tells him like, don't ever touch me like that with her there. And he like dangles a magazine. But there's a whole conversation there that's important because that's when he tells her what happens with Offglen, you know, that they took care of that small problem.
Oh,
Mm.
I dislike
They
him
took
saying it
compassion
like
on
that.
her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Literally
they were-
calling
yeah.
her clit a small problem made me mad.
A
Mhm.
small problem.
And they're taking
he's-
compassion on her, which I thought was just so cruel.
and he's looking at the magazine because she doesn't want to read it because she's pissed. He's looking at the magazine and he says, I don't remember what he says, but June says, well, we had choices back then. And he says, well, now you have respect, protection, and you can fulfill your biological destiny, which is
Vomit.
what fundamentalist groups
Yeah.
want women to have. Like that's the woman's place is, you know, you fulfill your destiny and you're protected by men because I mean, don't you have to be protected from men, by men?
It's a patriarchal thought, really.
Yeah.
Like you're a
And
woman,
then-
your destiny is to have babies and raise
Exactly.
them and that's
And
it,
then
you know.
that's when she says, what's more important than, and she says,
What
well,
else is
love.
there to live for? Love.
Yeah. And then she says, he says, well, children. And he says, well, love is just overrated or something like that. It's just love.
So he
It's-
says
Lust.
children, and she says, what else is there to, or he says, what else is there to live for? And she says, love.
June says
And he
love.
said, love isn't real. It's
Yeah.
overrated,
It's
et
lust.
cetera,
He
et
said if
cetera.
lust with a good marketing campaign.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then she says, maybe for you, but
She's-
not for me. And he gets pissed.
Yeah.
It's another
And then he-
indication that June wants love. I mean, she's always wanted it.
But then he says, we only wanted to make the world better. And he says, better never means better for everyone. I don't know if he says that or she says that.
He says that,
says
and then he
that.
says it always means worse for some.
and
That's
she like
how they
runs
take-
downstairs, but just that conversation is what has her vomiting.
She
in the
gets sick.
kitchen.
She kind of realized how fucked up Fred is, because he's like, giving her the speech about compassion and how, you fulfill your biological destiny. And he took care of a small problem, which was endless clitoris. Laughing Fred, he's so gross.
He is.
Like on the rewatch, I've realized, noticed just how disgusting, great acting, obviously. It has to take a lot for you to be so.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Well, even like the ceremony scenes are so violent almost,
Yeah, it's
Like, he
hard to
looks-
watch
he-
those.
Yeah, like especially this one though, he looks almost evil, like when he's grabbing her.
Yeah.
Oh God, he is such a good actor, but it's disturbing.
Okay, so she rushes out of Fred's room down to the kitchen and vomits because she's upset over Emily and his white maleness and uncaring. And then Nick magically appears in the kitchen because I think he's just always
Lurking.
Yes, he's just watching for lights to tell him what she's doing.
Well, he's
and
probably
that's-
extra paranoid about tonight because he feels so bad about.
Oh,
how
he's probably
they went.
nauseous himself. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. So he like appears very quickly after she comes into the kitchen. And yeah, he's like, are you sick? And she's just pissed off at everything. Certainly well deserved. And she's demanding for him to tell her. Oh, and he tells her to go to her room.
He
And
tells her to go to
yeah,
bed,
go
but
to
he's
bed.
joking.
Right. But
No.
she says, don't tell me what to do. Please don't tell me.
Well, first he
Where to go?
says he jokes that she go to bed, and then he says you shouldn't be down here. It's not safe. So basically,
Yeah.
he's kind of given her some commands in her eyes.
Right.
And she's like,
Which does
don't
not go
don't
over
tell me
well.
where to go.
Right.
Don't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Which I
don't-
think is such a key.
It's a
Piece.
it's an important
It's-
moment.
It's a very key moment for their relationship because she tells him, "Don't tell me where to go or what to do," and she's crying, and he stares at her. And can we just point out that Max's facial acting in this scene
Yes.
is just unbelievable? But he stares at her, and you could tell he's hearing her and he's processing this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a very big turning point in their relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big moment, I think. Right there. You can see.
There's something that I really enjoy about Nick's character, and it's the fact that he is protective but not overbearing. That's one of the things that I like the most about the way that he's portrayed in the show. And I know that has to do with Max Minghell's acting. He's protective, he protects June, but he doesn't tell her what to do. He's not overbearing. He doesn't think he knows better or what's better for her because he's a man.
He's
and-
not
and I-
patronizing.
Right.
Mhm.
Exactly.
At
He's not
all.
patronizing. To go back to what Ginger was saying, after he says that, that's when he apologizes to her about what Mrs. Waterford asked him to do. He says, I couldn't say no when Mrs. Waterford asked me. He's not looking at her because he's ashamed.
Mhm.
I'm guessing he thinks like, oh, well, now she thinks that I'm just like them. But then he really
Right.
looks at her in the eye and really apologizes. And you can see it in Max Minghell's face acting. That
Mhm.
he really means it, that he's
agree.
really, really apologizing. And June's reaction to the first apology is like, not whatever, but it's not the same reaction until he looks at her and apologizes. She kind of feels relief after he does the eye contact.
Mhm.
Because she understands too. She knows, I think, especially at that point, she knows that he had no choice in the matter either, especially once he said, I couldn't say no.
True.
Yeah, she kind of does like a little nod. Both of them
Mhm.
have really good just facial expressions in this scene.
So then after that, she asked him, like, please just tell me, are you an I? And you could see like his facial acting is so good. You can see like him processing this, and he wants to tell her, but he's debating like, should I tell her? Should I not? But he does give a little nod first before he actually says, yes, I am.
Mhm.
And it's heavy when he says it. He feels like
Yeah.
you can see like in his body language.
And I
That
think
it was
that's something
kinda
that
like-
was in the scripts. I think that it said like, this is treason. He can't like the
Yeah.
line before it said this is treason. He can't answer her. And then the next the next line is yes.
What do you guys think about June's reaction to his confession?
Well, she's shocked, but then I think she's like, I
don't
think once
she's
he makes,
shocked, though, she doesn't seem that surprised to me.
I think
Mhm.
she's shocked that he said
that
it.
he
though.
said it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
like
Yeah.
because I thought she was kind of upset, I guess. You know, obviously she wasn't thrilled about having to have a ceremony with Nick because
Mhm.
Serena forced them.
Mhm.
But I think she was also nervous about it because she even said earlier in the episode, you know, she went to Off Glen, Emily, and said, like, do you know if he's an I? Because I think she was afraid, like, I think she was more nervous about sleeping with him because he's an I versus this is forbidden, you know?
Yeah.
So I think
Mhm.
the fact that he actually said it out loud shocked her because she really saw at that point, like, oh, this is, I mean, he could be killed for telling me this. And he just said it out loud. So obviously there's trust there. And again, I think that's another reason why this whole conversation is a turning point, because now the trust, just like there was a trust between them, but now it's on a whole new level because he's admitting something that's very dangerous for him to admit.
It also shows that he likes her a lot more than she likes him right now, I think. I mean, he trusts her with that information. So
That's true. That's big. I also, in my notes, I was like thinking about the episode title, Faithful. And at first I was thinking, oh, it was in relation June to Luke. But then I was also thinking about like Serena to Fred. And then also Nick's allegiance to Gilead too. Like, is he faithful to Gilead or is he faithful
Mhm.
to June? And
yeah.
we
That's
see
good.
that come out.
That's a
Interesting.
very nice point.
Yeah.
Since she's smiling, I mean, she's been crying, but when she leaves the kitchen, she does this gesture, and I don't know how to read it. Like it
Yeah, it
felt
is.
like she had something over him. Like, now I know something about you. Like she had some power over him, but not in a bad way. The way she's
Well-
smiling, it's like she feels emboldened maybe because he told her. I don't know how to read
I think
it.
she gets what a big deal that was, and that she
Yeah.
did. Yeah, exactly. She had gained
'Cause
some
before
power
she
over- He
leaves-
had given her power over him, and she's acknowledging that with that
Mhm.
physical.
Well, I think
Right
he
before
then
she
he
leaves,
jokes,
the joke. She says,
jokes
you know,
again
like, go to your
about-
room before I report you.
which I think is him confirming to her, like he just told her he's an I. So technically he can, if he wanted to, he can go report her and everything that just happened. But I think by him joking again, go to bed before I report you, he's basically telling her, I'm not going to report you. Like this is
Mhm.
Yeah.
right.
That's their banter.
But I think
Right.
he's
I
trying
want-
to tell her, you're safe with me. I'm not going to report you.
I have seen people say that was not a joke, and just for the record, the
Yeah.
script actually very clearly
Yeah,
states that
the
that was a
script
joke
says that,
between
yeah.
two people in a
Mhm.
weird place, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Another thing that struck me was that when June asked Luke to leave his wife, he just goes, okay. And he just has his back turned to her. Like, I don't know. Part of me just thinks that Luke was maybe
Yeah.
having his cake and eating it too, maybe a little bit. And
But he leaves
until,
her.
I don't know.
Well, he says he answers her so quickly and she's shocked.
Yeah.
But then he goes, I'm in love with you. What else am I going to do? Which
Okay.
Yeah.
when I heard that, I was just like,
That pissed
shocked,
me
'cause
off.
That doesn't
Yeah.
sound very,
I,
it
I
doesn't sound very,
It's not very
like,
romantic, right?
Yeah,
right.
well,
It's
he
like,
had
well,
to
this is what I
ask
have
him.
to do.
It's
Yeah.
not like he made this big declaration to her. I don't know. It was just like so nonchalant. Like, okay, he didn't
Well,
he didn't like
he-
look at her.
I mean, he's like, well, what am I going to do? How about honoring your vows? That's what you should be doing.
Yeah,
You know, but Luke, again, never does anything for anyone else except himself. So he's fallen in love. So what is he going to do? I'm going to dishonor my vows
Mhm.
because this
Right.
pleases me, you know?
Mhm.
But
I
I
was
think it
actually-
also shows June's naivety because she's shocked, and I don't even think even the scripts it mentions that she's like has thoughts about that, like second thoughts because he said it so quickly. But then she ends up like cuddling with him and seems kind of happy, which I
Mhm.
think again shows her state of mind, like she's settling again. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I like that she was bold when she told him, because she's like, I want you to leave your wife. And that's June,
Mhm.
bold June, asking for what she wants. And then when he answers so quickly, she goes back to, oh, really?
Yeah.
She goes back to the way that she was before Gilead, which is, I always thought she had that fire in her, but it was just tamed by what society, or maybe what she thought she had to be in order to be with Luke, because that's the way that I see it. You know, she just settles to be who she thinks Luke wants. That scene was weird because then when she cuddles down, like I was trying to see if she didn't really look happy,
Yeah.
happy. Like another flashbacks where she looks like, I don't know. I think she was second guessing herself, but I might be looking into it too much.
I think that we're all just trying to say it didn't feel very convincingly like overpoweringly romantic to us.
Well, think about it though. What do you know from just just life, like what you see in TV, movies, people you know in real life? Married men don't typically leave their wife
No.
for their
Ex-
mistress.
Exactly.
So she asked him to do it, and I'm sure as many of us would, you would expect him to say no or to make excuses of why he can't
Down the
do that.
road, right.
But he says it so easily that I think she was just kind of taken aback because that's not what you would expect. So then how she's probably thinking like, I have to have a defense to this, like why you should leave your wife.
Uh-huh.
But he doesn't. He just says yes. So I think that's probably what's going through her mind. Like that was too easy,
Yeah. Yeah, it's odd to all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we see June go to the market where she sees of Stephen again and quickly comes up with an excuse to go speak to her. And she's since learned what happened to her. So she wants to say, that's terrible. I'm so sorry. And she's still like, even then, and Emily tells her name Emily. And even then, though, like Emily's still telling her about Mayday. And I think that it's cool that she's still so rebellious, or maybe more so.
She
even after
says
that.
She says Mayday can't use me because of what happened, but you need to find them. And June's like, how do I find them? My name's Emily. And then when June's about to tell her name, the new
F. Glenn
comes and gets her. Yeah.
Well, she asked June
Comes
her
and
name,
gets
but
her.
I think June hesitated because I don't think she was ready
Ready.
to say it yet.
If she hadn't
Yeah.
hesitated, she could have told her name. But then the ensuing scene is pretty crazy. And
Okay, I love that
Awesome.
scene.
I do
love-
too.
It's the best scene. I really would like for in season 5 for them to use Emily as someone that strikes Gilead with biological warfare.
Yes.
would be
Because
awesome.
she's a cellular biologist.
Right.
She knows bacteria and germs and stuff like that. That's just my head canon.
No,
I like it.
I like it.
I just love, I don't know, all the different looks. Her face acting is great in this too.
Yeah.
Stealing the car, feeling like invigorated and just like rebellious and amazing and
I'm
invincible.
scared.
And then feeling
scared.
like, oh shit, I'm clearly gonna die because of this. And then June like gives her the look too. And I can't even quite interpret this look because she gives her the smile and the head nod. And I know she's just like, I know you're gonna die, so I'm just gonna like encourage you and make you feel good about what you're doing. I can't tell if she's actually telling her to run back over the Guardian or not.
Probably, but I think it's just a nod to that small victory and that small feeling of freedom.
Yeah.
Like, yes, like, fuck it.
Well, way to
Because she
go,
sees the invincibility that Emily is feeling at that moment.
Yeah.
Right.
It's encouraging, I
And-
guess, for June.
Yeah.
Well,
It
yeah, I
is.
think
We'll
it
see
gives
it.
her more, yeah, exactly, for later. But just to Emily, just an amazing scene, like you said. I absolutely love it. And like, I think Janine says, what's she doing?
What is she doing?
She's driving.
June
Ian was
says
so
driving.
amused by that.
But despite her head nod, when Emily runs over the Guardian the second time, she's like, June's like shocked. It is graphic.
It was graphic.
It's funny too that she just decides to go in circles instead of like seek out Canada, which she would never reach. So it was really the best because it makes all the handmaids like enjoy the whole scene so much more, and they need that.
Yeah.
But it's funny because Fred mentioned earlier when he told June about what happened to Emily, there's plot armor there because he says they let her live because of her position, meaning she's a handmaid. So basically, because of her affair with that Martha, she would have been killed like the Martha was. But because she's a handmaid, she got to live. Right. So again, we see that handmaid plot armor again, where Emily like literally runs over a guardian and like crushes him, and they didn't kill her, you know.
Yeah, I was like, why aren't you guys using your guns? Why don't you shoot her?
Yeah, because they smashed the window, but they don't actually hurt her.
They can't kill. They don't have free reign to kill handmaids, even in murderous situations. So that is good intel. Also, great music in the Emily scene, and she also her makeup too looks a lot like. She looks so the German Shepherd scene, she looks miserable and run down, and the way she feels, I think. And then it's amazing what they can do to add to what's happening in the scene with makeup, because you can tell that she looks like bolder and more invincible and amazing.
Well, even with June, because June obviously the handmaids don't wear makeup, so like June always they all look kind of washed out and just. You could their emotions are on their face with their makeup, but then when you look at the flashbacks, like June, she's wearing makeup and her hair is all done and curly and all that, you know.
Pretty. So, it is. It's a pretty stark difference.
It's a good contrast, yeah.
So then she goes back to the house, and Serena does tell her in that scene to go have sex with Nick, right?
No.
You guys don't think that?
No.
What? Because she says some women can't handle the requirements of their position, can't do what needs to be done. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I think she's
telling her to go back to Nick whenever she can. I can't believe none of you think that. I can't believe none of you believe that. I love it. I can't wait to ask the rest of my friends.
I think it was just because she knew what happened with Emily, and she knew she thought that Emily like had a breakdown, and she's telling her like, you're a smart girl,
don't do anything crazy.
And that also plays into a future episode, what she tells her there, and that's why she's telling her that. And I like the dynamic because June walks to the picture and looks at the picture, and Serena sits down, so June's the one that's towering over Serena, and June has this like thing about her, like she feels
she has a fuck you kind of attitude,
invincible,
and she's like, yes, and she looks at her like, I'm gonna fuck with you. I don't know, she gives her a look, and Serena's like, what the fuck just happened?
What was it on the table? There was something,
like shears or something.
The shears again.
The same shears
again.
Yeah, so you could tell she's got that like, I want to kill you, Serena, because I hate you look.
I think then they focus to her sitting down on her room, and she has this voiceover which she says they didn't get everything, meaning they didn't get everything from Emily. There was something still inside her they couldn't take away. And then when she stands up, that's when she heads to Nick's apartment, and she looks invincible the way that Luke told her that he liked the picture. And she's walking, I mean, she's nervous, but she's not as nervous as the first time. She has a purpose. And what I really liked was that she knocks on the door, and when he opens the door, you can hear him scoff. Like, you can't believe that she's standing right there.
And I think he immediately knows what's happening.
Oh, he knows. I mean, she locks the door, but even before she locks the door, I think Dee Dee mentioned this earlier, the importance of the way this scene was filmed is that he doesn't touch her. And if you look back at Luke's and June's sex scene, they start kissing, whatever,
that's
and
gross.
He immediately grabs her boob, like immediately. And then here, you see how June's taking the control. Like, she takes off his shirt, the dog tags, she opens his pants, and she starts taking her stuff. And there's a part where she's pushing him back towards the bed. Like, she's the one that has the control. And then when she finally takes her bra off, that's when he can't hold any longer, and he like goes and touches her.
I think it's also kind of symbolic because, first of all, he gives her autonomy over her body, which is what Nick does. right? And like he's not, again, he's not someone who's going to push himself on somebody. He's not going to tell her what to do. But I also thought it was kind of symbolic that like once they're fully like naked, it's like the handmaid is gone. Now they're just a man and a woman. They're not the handmaid and the guardian. So I kind of saw that too as like, I don't know. I guess she's shedding the handmaid.
Yeah.
And they want to just be people who aren't oppressed, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Can I share with you guys what Mike Barker, the director of the sex scene, said? So Max has classified or in an interview that Mike Barker is the guru of sex scenes. So this is what he says. When it comes to show moments he's proud of to have directed, he points to the closing scene of Faithful, where June decides to sleep with Nick on her own terms. And this is what he says. And he refers to June as Lizzie. I think that was a mistake. But he says, I love shooting the sex scene between Nick and Lizzie in the first season. I mean, I loved it because it was the first real moment of freedom and personal empowerment for June. When she rolls on top, Barker says, she was so free in the moment. It had been ritualistic rape up until then. So to have this glimmer of hope and humanity in the middle of it for me was really exciting. That just goes to show you that she had this moment with Nick.
Uh-huh.
And Nick gives her agency to do that. She didn't have to stop and say, look, I want to be on top.
Right.
You know, she just did
I mean,
it.
It was so organic in the moment, man.
Yeah. I thought it was just even more powerful that there was no words spoken at all.
Mhm.
Right.
Which it was very different from the original, from the script, because the script, this scene played out totally different. They bantered. I think he pushes her up against the wall or the door.
Yeah.
Kisses her, and then like she's struggling to get her dress off, and
He's struggling to get her dress off. Yeah.
And she says, here, let me do it. And he says, mine's easy, which is cute. But like, I think this is just very, very powerful the way.
Right.
Yeah.
The way it was written was kind of like a typical sex scene that you see on TV any day, right? And the way that it was actually played out and acted was an entirely different kind
Like,
of
it was
sex
almost
scene
like
that
a
you never
dance.
see. It was, I was going to say that the way that like when she does get on top and he like sits up with her, it's the most like organically choreographed, just natural. It's amazing.
And I think it's
And,
worth pointing out too how much like he's worshiping her in this scene.
That's
like
what I
every
love
time
about it.
Yeah, like every time, like especially when she's on top and then he sits up with her, like he's legit looking up at her, like he adores her, you know.
There's never been a more worshiping moment in TV history than that, like 10 seconds or however long, probably longer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's the one that pins her hands instead
Yeah.
of the other way around, you know, and that's something, I mean, because she's been a victim of rape. In order for her to just give herself completely, entirely on her own terms, there has to be some level of trust and some invincibility from her part as well.
Definitely. I also learned what intimacy coordinators are or intimacy coaches are. I didn't know what they were before the show and before I got into this fandom, but they're basically people who are on set to make sure that both of the actors like feel comfortable with all the sex scenes. But I don't think that The Handmaid's Tale had intimacy coordinators for the scene. So
No.
They didn't have it till season 4.
Yeah.
Which is pretty insane.
I'm just saying that it speaks to Max and Lizzie's just chemistry.
Comfort. And,
Yeah, their comfort. I mean, obviously you have to be super comfortable with someone to do a scene like that. And it really shows.
Which Max did say in an interview that him and Lizzie have a lot of trust and respect between them. So he said it really was pretty easy for them to film. But I thought too, like, what else I love about that sex scene is that you can really feel the chemistry between Nick and June. Whereas honestly, I've never really felt the chemistry between June and Luke.
There's no passion. There was no passion.
Nothing.
And OT's a great actor.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. I don't feel the chemistry there. And I'm sure that was designed by the show. But Nick and June take it to a whole nother level that I've literally never seen on TV before, which is why I am here doing this podcast.
Right.
Just the culmination of all that sexual tension in the first 4 episodes coming to a T here at the end of episode 5 is one of my favorite moments.
Mhm. And I really appreciate how the episode ends with clapping.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great song.
It's such a good touch.
I don't think I never thought about it that way, but I immediately hear it in my head when you say that. I think that's a perfect point on which to end our spoiler free section, which has now run far longer than planned. And so if you are a new watcher to the show, we hope that you enjoyed episode 5, and we look forward to hanging out with you next week for episode 6.
You know, I think about us, the three of us, what we could be. I think about it all the time.
Please. It's terrible.
No, it's not. I know June. She's my friend. I care about her. How's your day going? You look pretty.
Thanks. I wore it just for you. Her father's a driver named Nick. He helped me to survive. Yes, you can, because I can't lose you.
I'm not gonna let anything happen to you.
What about you?
Your girlfriend is a badass.